The fall of the Dragon Queen. The ancient peaks of Mount Drakmor had witnessed many battles, but none as bitter as the one that unfolded on this blood-soaked dawn. Queen Zara, the last of the royal dragon bloodline, lay broken among the jagged rocks, her once magnificent silver scales now cracked and dulled with pain. Her own council, led by her trusted advisor Thorak the Black, had turned against her. They called her weak, a disgrace to their warrior heritage. Her crime? Showing mercy to human settlements instead of burning them to ash. You are no queen of ours, Thorak had snarled, his massive form towering over her. Dragons are meant to rule through fear, not compassion. The other dragons had nodded in agreement, their eyes cold as winter storms. One by one, they had attacked her, not to kill, but to humiliate. To break her spirit as much as her body. Now, as the last of her clan disappeared into the morning mist, Zara struggled to lift her great head. Blood trickled from wounds that would have killed any lesser creature. Her left wing hung uselessly at her side, torn and mangled. She had ruled for 3 centuries, protecting both her kind and the humans below. But her people saw only weakness in her mercy. They wanted a conqueror, not a protector. The mountain fell silent except for her labored breathing. For the first time in her long life, Queen Zara was truly alone. The proud dragon who had once soared above the clouds now couldn't even stand. As consciousness began to fade, she wondered if this was how her story would end, forgotten and broken on a desolate mountain, abandoned by those she had tried so hard to unite in peace. An unlikely savior. Marcus had been gathering medicinal herbs on the lower slopes of Mount Drakmor when he heard it, a sound like distant thunder, but wrong somehow. More pain than powerful. The young healer from Millbrook village was used to treating injured animals, but nothing could have prepared him for what he found among the rocks. A dragon, massive even in her broken state, lay unconscious with wounds that spoke of betrayal rather than battle. Most humans would have fled. Dragons were legends, creatures of terror from old stories. But Marcus saw only a suffering being in desperate need of help. By the gods, he whispered, approaching slowly. Her breathing was shallow, each breath a struggle. Without thinking, he dropped his herb pouch and pulled out his water skin. Carefully, Marcus began cleaning the worst of her wounds. His hands, steady from years of healing work, worked with gentle precision. He had no idea if human medicine would work on a dragon, but he had to try. As he worked, the dragon's great golden eyes fluttered open. Marcus froze, expecting flames or fury. Instead, he saw something that broke his heart, confusion and pain so deep it seemed to echo from her very soul. Easy, he said softly, the same tone he used with frightened animals. I'm here to help. The dragon, Zara, though he didn't know her name yet, tried to speak, but only a weak growl emerged. She was too weak to even lift her massive head. Marcus spent the entire day tending to her wounds, using every healing herb and technique he knew. As the sun began to set, he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. I'm not leaving you here, he said firmly, settling in beside her massive form. Whatever happened to you, whatever brought you to this place, you don't have to face it alone. For the first time in days, something like hope flickered in Zara's ancient eyes. Bonds of trust and healing. Days turned to weeks as Marcus faithfully returned to the mountain each morning. He brought fresh water, healing herbs, and something Zara hadn't experienced in centuries, genuine kindness without expectation of reward. Slowly, painfully, she began to heal. Her wounds closed, her strength returned bit by bit. More importantly, she began to trust again. Why? She finally managed to ask one morning, her voice like distant thunder but gentler now. Why help one such as I? Marcus looked up from preparing a poultice. Because you needed help, he said simply. Does there need to be another reason? Zara studied this strange human who showed no fear of her, who asked nothing in return for his care. Do you not know what I am? What my kind have done to yours? I know what you are, Marcus replied, meeting her golden gaze steadily. You're someone who was hurt and abandoned. The rest doesn't matter to me. As the days passed, Zara began to share her story, the betrayal by her own counsel, their accusations of weakness, the bitter loneliness of being cast out for choosing compassion over conquest. They were right about one thing, she said bitterly. I was weak. A true dragon queen would have burned half the world by now. No, Marcus said firmly. They were wrong. Mercy isn't weakness, it's the hardest kind of strength there is. For the first time in weeks, Zara managed to lift her great head fully. She looked at this small human who spoke such truth, and felt something she thought was lost forever, purpose. You speak wisdom beyond your years, young healer, she said. Perhaps there is still hope for both our kinds. As her strength returned, so did her resolve. The dragon queen who had once ruled with compassion was not truly dead. She had simply been waiting for someone to remind her who she really was. The rise of ancient power. The morning Zara first spread her wings and took to the sky again, Marcus felt both joy and a growing dread. News had reached them from the valleys below. Thorak and his followers were terrorizing human settlements, claiming dominion over all the lands that Zara had once protected. They're using my absence to justify their cruelty, Zara said, landing gracefully beside Marcus. Her silver scales now gleamed with renewed health and power. Every village they burn, every life they take, it's my responsibility. Marcus watched her pace, her massive form radiating barely contained energy. What will you do? What I should have done long ago, she replied, her golden eyes blazing with determination. I will reclaim my throne and restore the balance between our peoples. But they both knew it wouldn't be simple. Thorak commanded the loyalty of dozens of dragons, all convinced that might made right. Zara would be vastly outnumbered. You won't face them alone, Marcus said quietly. Zara turned to him, surprise flickering across her draconic features. You cannot mean to. I do, he interrupted. You saved yourself, but you also saved me. You showed me what real courage looks like. Now let me return the favor. That night, they made their plans. Marcus would rally the human settlements, convincing them to stand together instead of fleeing in terror. Meanwhile, Zara would seek out the few dragons who might still remember the old ways, the way of honor and protection rather than domination. As dawn broke over Mount Drakmor, Marcus climbed onto Zara's back for the first time. The sensation of flight was terrifying and exhilarating, but what gave him courage was the steady presence of his friend beneath him. Ready, my brave healer? Zara asked, her voice warm with affection. Ready, my queen, Marcus replied. Together, they descended toward the valleys where their greatest challenge awaited. Redemption and the final battle. The great confrontation came at sunset on the plains of Elderwood, where Thorak had established his dominion. The black dragon sat atop a throne of burned timber, surrounded by his followers, when Zara descended from the crimson sky. So, Thorak snarled, the fallen queen returns. And she brings a pet human with her. Marcus slid down from Zara's back, standing proudly beside her despite the terror radiating from the assembled dragons. Behind them, the human settlements had indeed rallied, not to fight, but to stand as witnesses to what would unfold. I return to reclaim what was never yours to take, Zara declared, her voice carrying across the plains. You have dishonored everything our people once stood for. Our people stood for power. Thorak roared, rising from his makeshift throne. Not weakness and mercy. The battle that followed was fierce but brief. Thorak was strong, but Zara fought with something he had forgotten, purpose beyond herself. Every flame she breathed, every move she made, was in defense of those who couldn't defend themselves. When Thorak fell, defeated but not destroyed, the other dragons looked uncertain for the first time. Their leader had failed them, but what came next? Zara stood over her former advisor, breathing heavily but victorious. I offer you all the same choice I offer him, she announced. Join me in building a world where dragons and humans coexist, or leave these lands forever. One by one, the younger dragons bowed their heads in submission. Even some of the older ones, remembering the prosperity of Zara's earlier reign, bent the knee. Thorak, broken and humiliated, snarled his defiance. "This isn't over, false queen." "Yes," Zara said sadly, "it is." As the defeated dragons departed, those who remained began the work of rebuilding what had been destroyed. Marcus worked alongside dragon and human alike, healing old wounds and building new bridges of understanding. Years later, when bards sang of the dragon queen's return, they would speak of magic and fire, of epic battles and ancient power. But Marcus knew the real magic had been simpler and more profound, the healing that comes when someone believes in you when you've stopped believing in yourself. Standing beside Zara as she held court in her restored mountain palace, watching dragons and humans work together in the valleys below, Marcus smiled. Sometimes the greatest victories weren't won with sword or flame, but with compassion and an unwavering belief that everyone deserves a second chance. Queen Zara had reclaimed her throne, but more importantly, she had reclaimed herself. And in doing so, she had shown both their peoples that true strength lay not in domination, but in unity. The end.